Right, so hello and welcome to the Wellbeing listener introduction. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. And my name's Liz Scott. I am from the social enterprise Inner Compass, which is based in Ivy Bridge in Devon. And it was founded by myself and my husband, Stu. Stu, if you'd like to introduce us.
Yes, we're actually a married couple. We're based in the same house. She's over there somewhere. It just seems to work better for us with Zoom when we're in two separate rooms. So we haven't fallen out. This is how it works. So Liz and I have been involved in coaching since about 2004 or 5. And initially we started coaching, and I would say in a very traditional way with goals and very sort of conventional approaches to coaching, and it was in around about 2014 that Liz started to get curious about something called the three principles, and it's that the journey that we've both been on since then, which is colloquially referred to as Inside Out, by an author and someone who really shares this Inside Out understanding, someone called Michael Neal that I've trained with. And what we're doing here is we're distilling the essence of the inside out understanding into something that is really accessible, under the guise of listening, because that, in our experience, is one of the key components of coaching, whether it be conventional coaching or whether it's something more bespoke, such as what we're pointing to here, the three principles or the inside out understanding. And hopefully in this introduction, you'll hear a bit more. Hopefully it will whet your appetite. Some of you I know are already involved with this understanding, and hopefully it will really resonate with everyone here tonight.
Thanks, Stu. And the idea of this evening is that we're going to explain what we mean by listening for well-being. And Stu's talked a little bit about the three principles and the inside-out understanding. And what we find and what we're going to share with you today is that the understanding, as we call it, it's a psychological understanding, gives a really rock-solid foundational base to engage with people, and in particular to engage with people in the community. And let me just take you back to 2020, which is when I started my community work. So Stu and I had been running a business for some time. And then in 2020, I was really curious about well-being in my local community. And I decided in the January to do a 3-month project exploring well-being. What was well-being in Ivy Bridge? And that's the local community to us. It's about 12,000 people in total, residents in the Ivy Bridge area. And I didn't really know anybody in Ivy Bridge. So what I did is I went and I decided to visit different community groups. And I went to different community groups, and I went to the Scouts, and I went to the Kung Fu Club, and I went to Slimming World, and I went to the Veterans Coffee Morning and a toddler group. And I I must have gone to about a dozen different groups that were operating in the Ivy Bridge area. And originally my idea was I thought I would start a well-being group. I thought I'm going to start a well-being group in Ivy Bridge. But what I began to realize very, very quickly was that there were lots and lots of fantastic groups in Ivy Bridge doing a great job. And the people that were attending these groups were really enjoying a feeling and a sense of well-being. And I was like, I don't really know that I need to start another group. These guys are just doing an amazing job. And so what I began to realize that I might be able to offer is I might be able to offer support to these group leaders Because what was tending to happen is that the group leaders were providing these really lovely safe spaces for people to come and to share and to be present. But often the group leaders would feel a bit of a sense of responsibility, and they'd almost like take a bit too much on. And I thought, well, I can really support them with their well-being. And as I said at the beginning, it was a 3-month project. And of course, we all know what happened in March 2020. We went into the pandemic. And what came from that was a real curiosity with myself and Stu, because we wanted to volunteer in our community, but weren't sure how. And we thought, well, one of the things that we can do is we can share with people about the power of listening. And we knew that there'd be lots of people who were finding things very difficult with anxiety and worry. And we thought, well, maybe if we were to put on a webinar about listening, that we would be able to just help people understand how they can best listen to themselves and each other. And that webinar we put on was called the Wellbeing Listener Introduction. And that's pretty much the same webinar that we run today. And it was really giving people a taster of what it's like to listen for well-being. And when we talk about listening for well-being, we're talking about listening for well-being, firstly within ourselves, and listening for well-being in others. And what you're going to explore tonight is that we're going to explore and show, and we're going to give you a demonstration as well of what well-being listening actually is. But we're going to show you how it's different. It's very different from what I was taught when I did my counselling and coaching courses about well-being and resilience. It's got a very different take and flavour to it. And what I've found is that sharing this understanding around well-being listening is really powerful because it's very simple, it's very portable, and I don't know anybody that doesn't like a good listening to. It's like we can all be really great listeners in our community. So since 2020, we've started a social enterprise. We've developed people on longer trainings, and I'll tell you about our wellbeing listener training at the end of this evening. And if you want to join us on that, we would love to welcome you. And the next one is in February. But what we've found is that we've trained up dozens of people now in our community and across the world in wellbeing listening. And what we find is that as people better understand what it is to listen, to like really listen to another human being, listen beyond all the stories and all the anxieties and all the worries, and listen to the heart and soul of that person that's in front of them, it just makes an extraordinary difference. And in our community here in Ivy Bridge, we continue to share wellbeing listening, and we continue to train people in wellbeing listening. And we're very fortunate that we've got a new grant from the lottery, which is enabling us to continue this training in Ivy Bridge. So this evening, you're going to get a flavour of what wellbeing listening is and what it's not. And also what we'll do is you'll get a demonstration. You'll see a demonstration of what wellbeing listening is when it's put into action. Stu, is there anything I've missed?
No, I think that's a good intro, Liz. It'll be good to move on to the next part, which is where we're going to ask you to go into small groups. Liz, I think that you've probably got that in hand. The groups, and what we'd like you to do when you go to your group is have a conversation about resilience and well-being, what it actually means to you, and we'll try and capture that a bit later. So you're asking the questions: what is resilience? What do we mean by well-being? What might the challenges be?
Hello and welcome back from your conversations. You were in groups and you were exploring a couple of themes, a couple of questions. So what is resilience? What is well-being? And what are the challenges? And Stu, you're going to pull in the feedback from the groups.
Great. Okay, so we had Caroline, Louise, Lucy, and Susan. So who's going to give me the feedback?
I can start with it.
Oh, right, Susan. Brilliant. Thank you.
I didn't.
Yeah, great.
I didn't take any notes. I said I should have taken some notes.
That's okay. Well, good. Thanks for volunteering. Yeah.
So
So we're looking at resilience, well-being, and the challenges. So over to you, Susan.
yeah. We just talked about how resilience is sort of that sense of knowing that I'm okay, that I'm safe, and that I will be okay no matter what's going on around me. No matter what's going on around me. And then we talked about how that can be a challenge to remember, and that some of the ways that we then sometimes respond to that is by, feeling like I need to get up and go do yoga or go for a run or go for, that there's that sense of not feeling safe in the sitting and being with it, the feeling of needing to do something. And yet the doing something is really not where we want to be. Like we want just when we can settle and be aware that if I'm here and I'm present, then whatever I need to do next will come to me. Like I will know that in my wisdom. Like it will I'll see that next step. I don't have to do anything. And in fact, that can create a lot of taking me further from my wisdom and self-criticism, and we talked about how there's that intellectual space of knowing this is where I want to be or I should be, and then there's the still allowing the wisdom to come forth. There's sort of that conflict within yourself sometimes of well, I know I should know this, or I know I should be doing that, and yet
yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, thanks, Susan. There's a lot in that, in what you've described about resilience and indeed well-being, that knowing, and yet there's often the challenges that come with it, the sort of conflicts that are often those that come from the past or might be somewhere in the future. Whereas I think you mentioned that being in the present, being in the now is and just knowing that you're okay and always will be okay. Yeah, I love that. Thank you very much. Thank you. What about the second group? Helen, Leslie, Maria, and Rebecca. Resilience, well-being. What do you make of it? What are the challenges? Is that Leslie? You mute, Leslie.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Wes, you're mute. We forgot to we've got so involved in it all, we forgot to nominate somebody, but I'll sort of try and bring it all together.
Great.
So it's well-being was, I'm going to be probably speaking more from my own because I wasn't really listening sort of that well, to be honest. I was having troubles with my chair, so that was one of my challenges.
Yeah.
It's that ability to bounce back and know that you're going to be, as Susan said, that you're going to be okay, that it is just a matter of the sort of the thoughts and things that you're having passing and sort of new thoughts coming in, and that really resilience to just keep going and not be scared about what's going on. I know that's not always possible. And likewise, what Susan was saying, the challenges is is kind of knowing all of this, but then that human side of us sort of comes up, and we're back there sort of like completely oblivious to all that we sort of know, and the truth of it all. And yeah, so that's really sort of what we were talking about. Was there anything else, guys, that I've missed?
I think you've done really well, Leslie. The only thing I just added at the end, which for me is something that I've come to see, which feels really important, I suppose, around well-being, because I think for me, the word well-being seems to be suggesting all positive things. If I have my well-being, then I'm happy and I'm content and I'm peaceful and I'm joyful and I'm all of those things. And the reality is we're not always those things. But I think for me, what I've come to see within that, and maybe it links to the resilience, is that, and that's okay too. That's a part of your being well. You can be well in amongst all those other feelings of sadness or anger or regret or what have you. And I suppose, yeah, that's something quite powerful that I've sort of feel that I've taken on board this year, and that feels that's okay. It's all okay. So
That's thanks, Leslie. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, there is something about even when it feels and looks like we're not okay, we're okay. Underneath everything, at our very core. And yeah, we're just going to invite you to explore that with us tonight. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. And it was just I was reminded, actually, just with what you were saying, the final piece there, Rebecca, which I think is really important. Well, it's been important for me, which is this idea that well-being is not what I used to think it was. I used to think well-being was about being happy all the time, being positive and squashing negative thoughts and going to battle with negative limiting beliefs. And I used to think that if I was feeling sad or upset, then there was more work for me to do to get back into my well-being. And it was really interesting because today I had a lovely conversation, a coaching conversation with a deputy head teacher whose school is, I mean, many schools are finding things tricky, but in her school in particular, many people have gone off sick, and she's kind of been given more and more responsibilities that she's had to take on. And we were just having this conversation, and she said the funny thing is, she said, I don't feel stressed with everything. I can see that there's lots that needs to be doing. I can see that there is the potential for stress, but I can almost like feel that, but also stay in my groundedness and well-being. I can kind of hold both of those at the same time. And I really like that. And it really struck me as being a really lovely way of looking at well-being from a slightly different perspective. Because certainly, I mean, I trained as a counsellor over 20 years ago, and I trained as a coach nearly 20 years ago. And I've done lots and lots of different trainings in my time, which I've absolutely loved and adored. And I think one of the things that's become much clearer for me, and I'm going to take you on a little journey with this and extend it in just a second, but it's this idea that actually well-being is not something that we need to do or to get or to create. It's like well-being, if some conversations that we have with people are, they kind of like, we need more well-being, for example, for working in a school. We need more well-being in our school. So what we need is we need more time for teachers to go out on a walk, or we need to encourage healthy eating. We need to do this. So there's a kind of a sense that well-being is often seen in our culture and as something that we need to add on and to do. And I want you to kind of be curious, because we're not saying that. we're kind of saying the opposite. We're saying, well, well-being is actually present. It's the core and essence of who we are. It's like when we are present and aware of our own well-being, and we live our lives with that awareness, it just seems to take a lot of the bumps out of life, and it takes a lot of the unnecessary thinking out of life. So we want you to be curious about how we see well-being. And I'm going to take you through a short slide presentation, which will underline this message again. But just bear in mind, we're not saying that well-being is something that you're lacking and you need to do to get more of. We're not saying that resilience is a muscle that needs building and strengthening. We're saying, no, actually, you're made of resilience and well-being. And if you're made of resilience and well-being, but you don't have that sense of it all the time, well, what's going on? And what we see is going on is that people get lost in their thought and their thinking and their moods, which distracts them from their well-being, but their well-being doesn't go anywhere. So let me share this with you in a slightly different way, and I'm going to take you through a short presentation, and then we're going to take a short little break. But I really like this quote. It's by a lady called Chantel Burns, and she wrote a book. I can't remember what it's called now. Motivational something or other. Instant Motivation, I think it was called. Anyway, she wrote this quote, and it was on Twitter, and she said, "The biggest problem we're up against as human beings is the gap between how we think life works and how it really works." So the biggest problem we're up against as human beings is the gap between how we think life works and how it really works. And that resonates with me because over recent years, the more that I've explored what we were talking about earlier, the 3 principles or the inside out understanding, the more I feel I've aligned myself with how life actually works. And there's a certain sense of ease and relief that comes from understanding how life works and aligning myself with it, rather than trying to fight against how it actually works. So let me introduce you to my dog. So this is Buzz. He's Buzz Lightyear, and Buzz is a Labradoodle. He's a bit of an old man now, but he's still a lovely dog. And when I work in my office, Buzz is often asleep beside me. So I work from home. That's my office. And there's something that happens every day, not so much now because he's a bit deaf, but certainly a year or so ago, every day the postman would come. And every day the same thing would happen. And this is what would happen. Buzz would be fast asleep beside me in his bed. The postman would come to the door and put the letters through the door, and Buzz would leap up, barking and barking and barking, and he would run to the front door and bark and bark and bark. And then once the postman had walked away from the front door, he would actually shake himself off, pick up the letters and bring them to us. And then he would just go right back to sleep as though nothing had happened. Now, I know this is behavior that dogs do, but I was always slightly baffled by it, because I was thinking, why, Buzz, do you go to that extraordinary effort when nothing actually happens? Like, why do you leap out of bed? Why do you bark? Why do you rush to the front door? Why do you bark and bark and bark? And then nothing happens and you go back to bed again. Surely you should realize by now, it's just the postman. You don't need to get out of bed at all. And I was so curious about this. I spoke to my friend who's a pet behaviorist, and I just said to her, why, just out of interest, why does he do that? And she said, well, does the postman ever come in? I said, no, of course he doesn't. And that's my point. Like he goes through this barking routine every day and nothing happens. And she said, well, that's your answer. She said, because in his world, he thinks that the only reason that the postman doesn't come in the house is because he goes through this barking routine to keep him on the other side of the front door. And it was like, oh, I understand. I understand the world of my dog. And then the more I thought about it, I was thinking, this is really interesting because I work with different people. And I find that a lot of people are in a lot of anxious and worried thinking, worrying and worrying and worrying about something that may happen in the future. And it never does. And in the same way that Buzz, in his world, believes that he needs to go through all this excessive energy in order to stop something from happening, maybe that's what's going on for people that I'm meeting up with, is that they think it's only because they go through all this worry and they go through all the scenarios that may or may not happen, that maybe it's because of all that thinking, they think that the thing didn't happen, but maybe it wasn't going to happen in the first place. And so the work that we do is about helping people really understand something significant, is that we have the capacity as human beings to quite literally frighten ourselves with our thinking. We're not frightened about the event. We can frighten ourselves with our thinking, with our worry, and with our anxiety. And we can get really lost in that. And it's really exhausting in that swirl of thinking. But actually, there's something that we can rely on that is very helpful that we completely miss. And so with our work, one of the things that we're keen for people to realize, and we use the term the inner compass, because we want people to realize that they've actually got what we call an inner compass within them. There's a quieter voice of intuition and wisdom that's giving us really, really good information. And it's really helpful to understand and realize that well-being and resilience are actually built into our system. That's actually what we're made of. It's really helpful and useful to know that well-being can be covered over by thoughts and feelings. That can happen. But the well-being doesn't go anywhere. And you don't need to get rid of thoughts. They will pass. That's the nature of what happens in our psychological system. And we've got this inner compass that lets us know when we're off track, and it will point us back. So let's look at another way of exploring this. And this is an image of the sea that was taken on 2 mornings, 24 hours apart, pretty much the same. I took it from the same viewpoint. And on the first morning, there was a storm brewing. And you can see that in the top photograph. Grey skies, very moody, slate grey sea. The wind was picking up. And on the next morning, the storm had passed. Beautiful day, blue skies, little fluffy white clouds. The sea was calm. It was just such a beautiful day. Now, if I said to you, on which day was the sun shining more brightly? Was it the day of the storm, or was it the day after the storm? Understandably, you might say, well, the sun was shining more brightly on the second day, because you can see the sky, it's blue, it's just a beautiful, warm, sunny day. But actually the sun was shining at the same strength on both days. The only difference is that there was a weather system passing in front of it on the first day. Now, if you imagine the sunshine representing resilience and well-being within us, then if you use that as your starting point, then that stays the same. But the weather system of your thoughts and your moods and your beliefs and your fears about the future and your memories of the past, those are the weather systems that can pass in front of your sunshine. And they might cloud over the sunshine, but they can never, ever obliterate it. Your well-being and resilience is absolutely at the core of who you are. And the final image I want to just share with you is this, and it's an image of a road. And if you imagine on the main roads that we come across, on the edge of a road, if you're driving along, you have what we call a rumble strip. And I don't know if you've noticed it, if you've driven along and you've just slightly drifted out of your lane, the tires on your car go over this rumble strip and they sort of make quite an alarming noise. And the tendency is that you realize you've drifted a little bit and you come back into your lane again. And the rumble strip is a bit like our feelings. They let us know when we're off course. Our feelings aren't to be, we don't need to be frightened of our feelings. Our feelings of anxiety and worry and stress, they're just letting us know that we've drifted away from our well-being. They're giving us really good information, and they're to be welcomed because they just let us know that we've slightly drifted off track. And in essence, that's what we're pointing to when we point to our inner compass. We're saying, tune into your inner compass, because that will really let you know if you've drifted off track, and it will point you back in the right direction to get back on track again. So Stu, anything you'd like to add before we take a very short break?
Yeah, thank you. They're simple images, but they resonate at a real level that really helps to illustrate what we've been talking about here. You know, the sun shines with the same intensity always, and yet those weather systems in the guise of thoughts, feelings, beliefs can veil our resilience and well-being and make it feel quite frightening. And I love the idea of the rumble strip. And you know, just imagine if you're driving that car and you hit the rumble strip, you sort of instinctively find your way back into your lane without dwelling on it. But as human beings, we've got a tendency to want to go and park down the road and go back and look at that rumble strip and check it out. And you know, what was it that actually caused me to feel that way, or to hit that rumble strip? Yeah, that's a sort of extending the metaphor a bit further, but it does make me smile that, you know, the rumble strip, we oops, and we're back on course, and off we go. We don't dwell on it. But in life, we're inclined to want to, you know, explore and forensically examine the reasons why. And we're saying, do you know what? I don't think we need to do that.
Thanks, Stu. We're going to take a 5-minute break. And after the break, we're going to illustrate and we'll do a demonstration of a well-being listener interaction conversation. So you can actually see what it means to listen out for well-being in another person. So if we could come back in 5 minutes, just a comfort break, grab a quick cuppa, and then we'll start again. and we look forward to seeing you in about 5 minutes.